Some mornings don't really begin. They just drag on. You open your eyes, but you're still stuck in a routine you didn't choose, trapped in thoughts you never asked for, and weighed down by habits that, without realizing it, are wearing out your body and mind. It doesn't matter how old you are if every sunrise starts with anxiety, guilt, or disconnection. Something deep inside isn't right. And the hardest part is, most of the time, you don't even notice. Today we're going to expose 7 mistakes most people make first thing in the morning, not out of ignorance, but out of habit. Some seem harmless, others even well-intentioned, but all of them come with a price you shouldn't keep paying. Stick around until the end because the final lesson might completely change the way you wake up, and with that, the way you live each day. I'm Gabriel. This is the Stoic Garden. And if you've ever felt like your mornings no longer belong to you, this video is for you. Have you ever stopped to think how many of your first thoughts in the morning are about what you have to do for others and not what you truly need? How many times do you open your eyes carrying the weight of 1,000 invisible debts no one has asked you to repay, yet you impose on yourself like a sentence? This is the first point I want you to see with absolute clarity. Waking up with thoughts of emotional debt is one of the most draining mistakes you can make each morning. And the worst part is it often happens without you even realizing it. This is the first point on our journey, waking up with thoughts of emotional debt. Maybe you wake up thinking about calling your kids, even though they never call you. Or you feel like you have to be available just in case someone needs something, in case someone assumes your time isn't valuable. Maybe the first thing that crosses your mind when you wake up isn't, "Thank you, God, I'm alive," but "What do I have to do for others today?" That tiny moment, that first breath of the day that should be yours, becomes the echo of all the unresolved obligations you've been carrying for years. This isn't generosity or love or selfless devotion, it's a form of forgetting, a subtle and cruel way of betraying yourself the very moment you open your eyes. The thing is, emotional debt isn't measured in money or favors, it's measured in guilt, in silence, in that "I have to" you repeat like it's some unbreakable law. But it's not. No one came into this world to live as a slave to what others expect, especially not when you've already given everything and still feel like it's never enough. I once heard a woman say she woke up every day feeling behind on her own life. She wasn't talking about chores or goals, she meant something deeper. She said, "I wake up feeling like I need to apologize for sleeping, for forgetting someone, for not being available all the time." That sentence stuck with me. Because it's not an exaggeration, it's the quiet truth of so many women. Women who have been mothers, wives, daughters, caregivers, and who now, instead of resting, still feel in debt. But let me ask you something, who are you really in debt to? Who's demanding so much from you, if not yourself? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The life of each person is what their thoughts make of it." And if your first thoughts of the day are guilt, demands, unfinished tasks, and the shadow of a love you feel you still have to prove, then that's how your day will go, and eventually, how your life will go. Living in emotional debt is like waking up each morning and strapping a backpack full of stones to your back before taking your first step. No one puts it on you. You carry it yourself out of misunderstood loyalty, inherited habits, fear of the void that comes with not knowing who you are if you're not fulfilling a role for someone else. Just imagine for a moment that you wake up without that burden, that your first thought isn't, "Who do I have to call?" but "How do I feel today?" That it's not "What do I need to fix?" but "What do I need to start this day right?" That's not selfishness, it's respect. And that respect begins with refusing to live under the dictatorship of emotional obligation. Because if your mornings begin in debt, everything you do afterward will be fueled by effort, but not by love. And over time, that drains the soul. What I want you to take away from this first point is simple, yet transformative. You have the right to wake up in peace, not in debt, not in obligation, not in constant sacrifice. Sometimes the most honest prayer you can say when you open your eyes is this: "Today, I'm going to take care of myself. Today, I don't owe anyone anything except myself." And if someone doesn't understand that, that's their problem, not yours. This is just the beginning. And if you already saw yourself in this first mistake, I invite you to keep listening. Because what's coming won't just challenge you. It might just help you reclaim your mornings. And with them, your whole life. If you wake up already burdened by emotional debt, like we talked about a moment ago, what follows is almost automatic. You start your day disconnected from yourself, as if your body doesn't even belong to you. And that's the second silent mistake that's deeply damaging your physical and mental health. We've arrived at the second key point of this video: getting up without inhabiting your body. It might sound like a strange phrase, but I want you to think about it honestly. What's the first thing you do when your feet hit the floor? Do you take a moment to feel your breath, to notice how your legs, your back, your hands are doing? Or do you just get up on autopilot out of sheer habit without any real presence? Many older adults live as if their body were just an object to move, to push, to tolerate. But that body, now perhaps fragile, slow, or uncomfortable, is the same one that carried you through every battle of your life. The problem is, as we grow older, we stop treating it with respect and start treating it with indifference, even rejection. In Stoicism, the body is not the center of existence, but it's not to be neglected either. Epictetus put it plainly: take care of your body, but don't let it rule you. And that care doesn't start at the gym or the doctor's office. It starts when you wake up, in the first gesture you make, in the awareness that you are alive and still have a vessel that allows you to experience the world. Lacking that awareness not only weakens your relationship with the physical, it also severs your connection to the spiritual. Because when you treat your body as a burden, as something that's no longer useful, you're telling yourself that your time here isn't as valuable as it once was. And that's a dangerous lie. I know women who wake up each morning feeling like their body is a betrayal. It hurts to get up. It's hard to move. They look in the mirror with frustration. But the deepest pain doesn't come from arthritis or weight gain or low energy. It comes from the disconnection. That feeling of not recognizing yourself, of looking at your reflection and feeling like it has nothing to do with you. And in that disconnection, neglect begins to grow. You stop doing small things. You don't walk like you used to. You don't stretch. You don't feel like it's worth dressing with intention, eating well, or minding your posture. Everything becomes functional, without soul. But here's a truth you can't keep ignoring. When you get up without inhabiting your body, you're telling life you're not fully here. And life, in its wisdom, responds. You feel more tired, more irritable, more disconnected. Relationships grow cold, conversations lose depth, and little by little, you start believing that aging means fading. But it doesn't. Aging is not fading, it's transformation. And that transformation needs your full presence, not just your mind, but your body, your expression, your breath. I've spoken with many women who, upon reconnecting with their body, also reconnected with something deeper: the joy of being alive. It's not about extreme workouts or perfect diets. It's about getting up and stretching as if you matter, about touching your skin with tenderness, about walking with dignity even if it's slow, about drinking water as if honoring a temple. Every one of those gestures is an act of gratitude, an act of presence. And when that presence becomes part of your morning routine, it starts healing things that medicine often can't reach. There's no true spirituality without bodily presence. You can pray, meditate, repeat mantras, but if you do it from a body that's been abandoned and disconnected, it's like speaking to God with no voice. The body also prays, also listens, also longs to be part of that sacred relationship you have with the divine, with life itself. That's why this second point is so essential, because it's not just about physical health, it's about reclaiming your place in the world, and that place begins with how you inhabit your body, how you treat it, how you choose to be present the moment you wake up. Stop getting up as if you don't matter. Every morning is a chance to reaffirm that you're alive, that you still have a voice, that your body is still your home. Live in it with dignity. Live in it with love. Because if you don't, no one else will. And believe me, this small decision can change the rest of your day, and little by little, the rest of your life. If you start the day feeling like you owe something to everyone and then get up treating your body as just another burden, what usually follows is a seemingly harmless habit, but one that reveals far more than it seems. We've reached the third point of this video, and this is where things begin to shift. Checking your phone as the very first act of the day. It's not just a tech habit, it's an unconscious decision that says, my inner world can wait. First, I need to see what the world wants from me. And that small gesture carries deeper consequences than you might think. Because when you open your phone, before you've even opened your own awareness, you're handing over your attention, your energy, and your direction to everything outside of you. Email, news, messages, social media. Each notification is a hand pulling you into the noise, into anxiety, into the urgency of responding to what others expect, think, or need. And you, who've barely taken 2 breaths since waking, are already caught in a conversation you didn't choose, in a tension that doesn't belong to you. The most concerning part? This happens every single day, unnoticed, until it becomes your default way of living. Always available, always informed, always invaded. Now let's talk about the strategy that can make all the difference. It's simple, though not necessarily easy. Create a margin of intimacy before touching any screen. I'm talking about a brief but sacred space. It could be 3 minutes or 20, whatever you choose. But in that time, your world belongs to no one but you. You can sit in silence, breathe intentionally, say a prayer, write down your dreams, or simply gaze out the window with presence. What matters isn't what you do. It's the place you're doing it from. This small margin builds an invisible boundary between your inner center and the chaos outside, and that is profoundly Stoic. Because the Stoics didn't shut themselves off from the world, but they did train their minds not to be ruled by it. Epictetus insisted that freedom begins when you decide what's worthy of your attention, and there's no moment more fragile or more powerful for making that decision than right when you wake up. If you don't choose what enters your mind first thing in the morning, someone else will. Think of it like opening your front door. You wouldn't let just anyone walk in without knowing who they are. So why would you let a flood of uncontrolled stimuli into your mind in its most vulnerable state? Maybe you think checking your phone doesn't affect you that much. But if you pay attention, you'll notice how your body tenses afterward, your mind scatters, and your day starts being shaped by the outside world. This isn't about demonizing technology, it's about reclaiming your right to begin from within, from what you feel, from who you are, from what you need. Because if you don't cultivate that inner space each morning, you'll never really know what you're acting from. And a life lived only in response to the outside world slowly fades, until one day you realize you don't know when you lost yourself. If these reflections are resonating with you so far, subscribe to the channel and hit like. This space is made for women who are done living on autopilot and who've decided to truly wake up. Tell me which country you're watching from, and if this point struck a chord with you, write this phrase in the comments. I choose to start with me. There are still important lessons ahead, and the last one might just change the way you understand your mornings completely. Stay with me. There's still much more to say. In the previous chapter, we talked about the seemingly harmless habit of checking your phone first thing in the morning, and how that simple act hands over your peace to the outside world. Now it's time to look at something even more subtle, but just as damaging. Because even if you don't touch a screen, even if you keep your eyes closed for a few more minutes, you can still be invaded, not by external noise, but by the noise within. The fourth point I want us to explore today is this: skipping your inner silence. And I'm not talking about meditating or reaching some elevated state of consciousness. I mean a much more tangible kind of silence, urgent, essential. That moment when you could connect with yourself, but choose not to. You let it slip by. You replace it with worry, with thoughts you know by heart, with internal phrases you repeat without question: I have to, I can't, it's too late for me. This mistake is so destructive because it's invisible. It doesn't make a scene or bring immediate consequences. No one sees you doing it. No one calls you out for not stopping. But your soul notices. It notices every time you feel tired for no reason, empty without explanation, irritated with the world without knowing why. That's the price you pay for not giving yourself even one conscious moment of pause when you wake up. This inner silence is not a spiritual luxury. It's a vital necessity. Because it's in that space that you begin to remember who you are, before remembering who the world expects you to be. That's where a voice begins to emerge. One that doesn't yell, doesn't demand, but quietly guides. A voice that belongs to you, but that you haven't heard in years. And that voice needs space. It can't surface if the moment you open your eyes you're already thinking about breakfast, unread messages, yesterday's unfinished tasks. Many women struggle with silence because they're afraid of what it might reveal. Afraid that if they pause, an old sadness might surface, or a truth they don't want to face. But here's the thing. If you don't allow that space, if you don't make room for silence at the start of your day, what you're doing is adding another layer of noise over your soul. And no real peace can be built that way. It's like trying to pray with the radio on, like trying to rest with all the lights on. It just doesn't work. And yet, so many live like this for decades, afraid to stop, believing that constant movement means they're alive. But it doesn't. Sometimes, real life begins when everything else goes quiet. And you can create that moment. You don't need a perfect setting or a complicated routine, just the firm decision not to skip it. The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius wrote every morning to clear his mind, not because he had free time, but because he understood that without that pause, he was vulnerable to whatever the day would throw at him. And you, who have lived through so much, also know that each day can bring the unexpected. Bad news, a painful phone call, a new kind of fatigue. How are you going to hold all that if you didn't even take a few minutes to anchor yourself? Skipping your inner silence makes you reactive. It makes everything hit harder. Other people's words feel like wounds. Problems seem bigger. And all of that wears down your emotional autonomy. It makes you feel like everything comes from outside, like nothing is under your control. But there is something you can control. You can choose to start your day in silence, in listening, in presence. That choice is an act of power. It's a way of saying, I set the tone for my day, not the circumstances. And even though it might seem small, over time it transforms your life. Because you begin to act from a steadier place, a place that's more centered, more your own. You start to see more clearly what matters and what doesn't, what deserves your energy and what's better left behind. That kind of clarity can't be bought, inherited, or improvised. It has to be cultivated, and it's cultivated in silence. So next time you wake up, don't rush. Don't rise like someone fleeing. Stay there just a little longer, not to think, not to plan, just to be. Because that being, with yourself in silence, might be the very first step toward the peace you've been searching for. And maybe, without even realizing it, that peace has been waiting for you in the very moment you've been skipping all along. We've reached the fifth point in this journey, and it's not an easy one to face because it hides in plain sight, in the ordinary, in what seems harmless. But it's one of the most damaging ways to start your day without even realizing it. The title of this point says it all: beginning the day with complaints disguised as routine. It's not about yelling or cursing the moment you wake up. All it takes is a resigned sigh, a thought like, "Here we go again," or that subtle frustration that shows up before you even open your eyes. These are the quiet internal phrases no one else hears, but you repeat every morning. Everything hurts. This doesn't make sense anymore. Why do I even try? And while they may seem like fleeting thoughts, the truth is they're declarations, ones that shape your life and slowly erode your dignity day after day. Because what you think at the start of the day sets the tone for how you face everything else. And if your mind is filled with complaints, even if you never say them out loud, your body feels it. Your mood sinks, and life starts to feel like a burden instead of a gift. What makes these complaints so insidious is that they're hidden behind an empty routine. You get up, make coffee, straighten the bed, check your phone, move your body without soul. And deep down, you feel like none of it matters. That's the trap, looking like you're functioning when you're actually shutting down. Because you're no longer connected to what you're doing. Because somewhere along the way, everything became about duty, about habit, about getting through, not about desire. And over time, that becomes poison. It doesn't kill you outright, but it slowly eats away at your self-respect. Because when you live like that, you know it. You're betraying yourself. And then other consequences follow. Your voice becomes softer, your decisions more hesitant, your relationships colder, and deep down, you start to feel like you have no control, like your life is something you simply endure. But this is where I want to stop and tell you something you might really need to hear right now. It's not too late to take your direction back. It's not about changing your whole life overnight. It's about drawing a line within yourself, about deciding that you're no longer going to repeat the same script every morning, the one that dims your light. Complaints aren't destiny, they're signals, and if you listen closely, if you face them without fear, they can show you what you no longer want to carry. But you have to shift your perspective, not with fake optimism, but with a deeper truth. The truth that you can still live with intention. That the day isn't lost just because it starts out rough. That every sunrise is an invitation to reconnect with yourself, even if it's just through one small gesture. The problem isn't feeling tired. The problem is letting that tiredness make your choices for you. I know you've tried to change before and didn't see results. I know there are mornings when all you want is for the day to be over quickly, but I also know there's a voice inside you that hasn't completely given up. A voice that wants your time to mean something, that wants your daily life to feel like more than just a sentence, that wants the silence to hold clarity, not complaints. That voice needs space. And it finds that space when you stop telling yourself that everything is wrong and start asking honestly, what can I do differently today? Sometimes all it takes is doing something slowly, lighting a candle before making breakfast, writing 3 lines on a piece of paper, looking up at the sky without rushing. These aren't magic fixes, they're conscious choices, and each one is a way of saying, my life still belongs to me. Because if there's one thing I want you to take from this chapter, it's this. Routine doesn't have to be a punishment. It can be a ritual, a quiet affirmation of your worth. But that depends on you, not on your body, not on your circumstances, not on what others do, on you. So the next time you catch yourself starting the day with a complaint in your soul, stop, breathe, and choose a different phrase, even if it's just one, even if it's small, because that small gesture, repeated day after day, can become the truest way to return to yourself. And at this point in your life, that changes everything. If in the previous point we talked about how complaints disguised as routine can quietly drain the life out of you, now we need to look at something even deeper, something that continues to echo every day without your conscious permission. Because there comes a time when the body isn't just tired, the mind becomes a broken record of old thoughts, unhealed wounds, and phrases that just won't fade. The sixth point in this video touches on something painful, but something we can't keep ignoring: turning on the radio of the past. That radio starts playing the moment you open your eyes. It doesn't need electricity or volume, only that you haven't fully forgiven yourself, that you're still holding on to what wasn't said, to what others didn't do, to what you waited for and never came. It's an inner radio that broadcasts the same thing every morning. Old stories, past grievances, scenes that loop endlessly like you've forgotten how to change the channel. And the hardest part is, you get used to it. You get used to hearing it, to living through it, to feeling like the past is still alive, when really the only thing that's alive is your attachment to it. I want you to picture this clearly. You wake up to a new day, and before moving a single muscle, your mind is already replaying that argument from years ago, that hurtful comment someone made, the silence of a child who still doesn't call. And you realize that even though the calendar has moved on, you haven't. You're still trapped in a scene that never changes. It's like living in a house that's never cleaned, where the same mess has been lying around for years, where every corner reminds you of something you'd rather forget. But you don't forget because you're not doing anything to leave, because turning on that radio of the past has become part of who you are. And that, harsh as it sounds, is slowly killing you. It drains your energy, your dignity, and most of all, it keeps you from living the present with freedom. The question you need to ask yourself isn't, why do I keep remembering this? It's, what am I avoiding by staying here? Because often, living in the past is a way of avoiding the present. It's easier to keep blaming what was than to take responsibility for what you're not doing today. And that comes with consequences. The first is frustration, the feeling that your life isn't moving forward, that everything feels heavy, that nothing surprises you anymore. Then comes guilt, that inner voice telling you that you messed up, that you wasted time, that you should have chosen better. And eventually, if nothing changes, comes loneliness. Not physical loneliness, but emotional loneliness. The kind that lingers even when people are around, because you're no longer present. You're somewhere else, in another time, another pain, another version of your story. There are no magic formulas here. I won't tell you that closing your eyes and taking a deep breath will fix everything. What I will tell you is this: you need to decide with your whole heart to turn that radio off. You can't erase the past, but you can stop living from it. And that starts with an act of presence, with telling yourself each morning, today, I won't replay the story. Today, I'll look at what I have, at who I am, at what I can still do. That sentence, said with conviction, can be more powerful than 1,000 therapy sessions, because it's a decision that draws a line. And right now, in this stage of life, you need to draw lines, not just with others, but with yourself, with your mind, with your memories, with your old wounds. What's ahead of you can still be lived with dignity. But it won't be possible if you keep dragging the weight of what can no longer be fixed. And deep down, you know that. You feel it every time you wake up bitter, resentful, convinced that everything you deserved has already passed. That's not true, it hasn't passed, but you can only access what's new if you silence the noise of the old. And that, though it may seem small, is an enormous act of freedom, because it brings you back to the present. It brings you back to yourself. And from there, everything can begin again. even if you're 60, 70, or 80 years old. As long as you're alive, it's not too late. But only if you stop repeating the story that no longer serves you. Turn off that radio, reclaim your silence, and from there, start living. Because what's coming, though you don't know it yet, might be better than you ever imagined. If up to now we've talked about waking up burdened by the past, by repeated complaints, by empty routines and inherited thoughts, it's time to go deeper, to the root, because none of those traps sustain themselves. They all feed off a single choice that, while it may seem passive, shapes the course of your life. We're at the 7th point of this video, and it's one you can't keep ignoring. Getting out of bed without choosing your direction. That is, waking up without asking yourself why, without pausing to decide how you're going to live your day, without taking on the weight and the power of your own will. So many older adults get up every morning as if someone else wrote the script before they even open their eyes, as if they had no say in how the day goes, as if everything had already been decided. And that's not just untrue, it's dangerous. Because when you don't choose your direction, something else will. Routine will. The past will. Inertia, habit, even fear, these all end up making the choices you're no longer brave enough to make. And then you feel what you've probably felt so many times, that your life no longer belongs to you, that you're just doing the bare minimum, that the days are passing by without you truly being in them. But let me say this clearly, no real change is possible until you reclaim your right to decide. And that decision starts the moment you open your eyes. It's not about planning the whole day or setting unrealistic goals. It's about something far more essential, asking yourself with raw honesty where you're going to live from today, from complaint or from gratitude, from resignation or from presence, from I have to or from I choose to. That tiny difference changes everything. Because what you choose, even if it's uncomfortable, strengthens you. But what you just accept out of habit slowly empties you. And yes, it's easier to say that's just how it is. I'm too old for this, or it doesn't matter anymore. But that ease comes at a high cost. The cost of your real life, your presence, your dignity. You weren't born to follow someone else's script. You didn't make it to this stage of life just to live on autopilot. Every day you get up without direction is another day handed over to what you didn't choose. It's a silent surrender of your power. And there's no age where that surrender stops hurting. Even if no one says it, even if everything looks normal on the outside, because inside, you know when you're lying to yourself, you know when you're avoiding the mirror, you know when you chose to distract yourself instead of face yourself. And if you're here, listening to this, it's because part of you is done with that cycle. That part deserves to be heard, not with hollow promises, but with concrete decisions. And the first is this. Tomorrow, when you wake up, don't jump out of bed. Stay with yourself for a moment, breathe, and choose where you're going to live from today. Even if it's just for today, even if it's through a single gesture. Because that's where everything begins, not in what others say, not in what happened yesterday, not in what you fear about tomorrow. It starts with you and how you choose to get out of bed. Transformation isn't a pretty idea. It's the direct result of your choices. And you, no matter how tired, how hurt, how many doors feel closed, you still have that choice. No one else can make it for you. No one else should. Because what's at stake isn't just a morning habit, it's your life. And you deserve to live it with direction, with purpose, with strength. Everything else is just noise. And you've heard enough noise. Now it's time to truly wake up and choose. Because if you don't make that choice, life will make it for you. And believe me, that never ends well. If you've made it this far, you know this video wasn't meant to be comfortable, light, or polite. I didn't come here to tell you what you've already heard 1,000 times. I came to speak to you with the clarity you deserve, to name the truths that often go unspoken out of fear, habit, or a desire not to make anyone uncomfortable. But you chose to listen. You chose to stay. And in a world that only wants to entertain or distract you, that choice is an act of courage. What you saw today wasn't just a list of morning mistakes, it was an X-ray of how autonomy fades when you let routine decide for you. And now you know, that's not innocent. It has consequences. Because every morning you give in to autopilot is a missed opportunity. And at this point in life, time is not something to waste. I want to acknowledge every one of you who stayed until the end. Not many people have the courage to face what no longer serves them. Not many are brave enough to question what they do the moment they wake up. That's why I want to ask you something simple, but meaningful. If you're here, if something you heard touched you deep inside, leave your country in this phrase in the comments, "I wake up with direction." That way I'll know you're part of the small group that doesn't just listen, but chooses to act. Because that's what we do here. We're not here for comfort or quick fixes. We're here to remember who we are when we stop living asleep. I'm Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden. This channel exists for one clear reason: to walk alongside women who have been overlooked, misunderstood, or reduced to a role, and who now choose to reclaim their place, their body, their voice, and their time. We don't romanticize aging here. We face it, with strength, with philosophy, with direction. Because it's not about how much you've lived, it's about how you choose to live what's left. And if you feel that this community can help you hold on to that choice, I invite you to subscribe, not to boost numbers, but to continue building a space where truth and dignity aren't for sale. Share this video with someone who needs it, someone you know is slowly fading without realizing it. Sometimes a single phrase, an image, a quiet moment can change the course of a day, and a single day can change the course of a life. Stay close. This isn't the end. It's just a pause, a breath, before we keep going. Here are 2 more videos that can help you hold on to the shift we've just begun. Because now that you've awakened, the next step is to stay awake, and you don't have to do it alone. We're here, walking with you, word by word, until you recognize yourself again.